I want to take you on a journey today, up a ladder. We're going to start at the bottom rung, a retiree living on $2,000 a month, and we're going to climb one level at a time, all the way up to $20,000 a month. And at every rung, I'm going to show you three things: exactly where that income actually comes from, what daily life honestly looks and feels like at that level, and where the money goes, the real budget behind the number. Because here's what fascinates me about this. We talk about retirement income as if it's one thing, but the truth is that $2,000 a month and $20,000 a month are two completely different worlds, different houses, different worries, different mornings, and most people have no idea where they'll actually land, or what the rung above them or below them really feels like. By the end of this climb, you'll be able to find yourself on this ladder, see clearly what the next rung up would take, and understand exactly what's driving the difference. Let me give you your bearings before we start, because context makes all of this land harder. In 2026, the average Social Security check is about $2,070 a month. The median household headed by someone 65 or older brings in around $59,000 a year. Call it just under $5,000 a month. So that median household sits right in the middle of our ladder. Below it, tens of millions of retirees. Above it, a smaller and smaller group as we climb. Keep that map in your head as we go, because part of what we're doing today is honest, showing you not just each lifestyle, but how rare or common it actually is. One more thing before we climb. Notice the machinery underneath every rung, because it's the same machine at each level, just scaled up. Retirement income comes from a small number of sources: Social Security, a pension if you're lucky enough to have one, and your own savings converted into income using that 4% rule we talk about, where each year you can safely pull about 4% of your nest egg, which is the same as saying every $1,000 a year of income takes about $25,000 of savings to produce. Guaranteed income, like Social Security and pensions, does the heavy lifting at the bottom of the ladder. Your own savings does more and more of the work as we climb. Watch that shift happen as we go up. All right, to the bottom rung. Level 1, $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year. Let me introduce you to Dorothy. She's 73, widowed, living in the same modest house she and her husband bought decades ago in a small town where the cost of living is low. Her $2,000 a month is almost entirely her Social Security check. That's it. That's the whole income. There's no pension, and whatever small savings she and her husband had went largely to his final medical bills. So Dorothy is living on Social Security alone, and she is not alone in that. A very large share of American retirees are essentially in Dorothy's position, leaning almost entirely on that one government check. What does life feel like at this level? Honestly, it's careful. Every day, Dorothy's income is about 50% above the federal poverty line for someone her age, so she is not destitute, but there is no cushion and no room for error. Her whole financial life is built around one enormous piece of luck. Her house is paid off. That single fact is what makes $2,000 a month survivable instead of desperate. Without a mortgage or rent, her housing cost is just property taxes, insurance, and upkeep, and that changes everything. Let me walk you through her month. Of that $2,000, maybe $500 goes to the costs of the house, taxes, insurance, the constant small repairs of an old home, a couple hundred to utilities. Her Medicare premium comes right out of the Social Security check before she even sees it, and other medical costs take another chunk. Food is where she feels it most. She watches every sale, cooks everything at home, and a restaurant meal is a genuine event, not a routine. There's very little left for anything else. A surprise, a furnace that dies, a car repair, a dental bill is not an inconvenience at this level. It's a crisis that means borrowing or going without. But I don't want to paint this as only bleak, because it isn't. Dorothy's life has real richness in it. Her time is entirely her own. She has her garden, her church, her grandchildren who visit, her friends of 50 years 2 streets over. Her joys are mostly free ones: a walk, a phone call, a slow morning with coffee and the radio. Studies of happiness in retirement find again and again that beyond a certain modest point, more money doesn't buy much more contentment. And Dorothy is living proof that a life can be tight in dollars and still be full. But make no mistake, this rung requires vigilance, it offers no margin, and one bad break can shake the whole thing. That's the truth of 2000 a month. Now let's step up. Level 2, $3,500 a month, 42,000 a year. Meet Frank and Ann, a married couple both 69. Here's the first big jump in the machinery, and it's the most common one in America. They have 2 Social Security checks instead of 1. Frank's is a bit larger from his working years, Ann's is smaller, and together they bring in about $30,000 a year from Social Security. On top of that, they have a modest nest egg, around $300,000 they saved over their careers, and pulling about 4% from it adds another $12,000 a year. Added up, and they're at roughly $42,000 a year, $3,500 a month. This is a meaningfully different life from Dorothy's, and the difference is the word breathing room. Frank and Ann still watch their money. They're not extravagant, and they'd never call themselves well off. But they're not counting every dollar of every grocery trip. They can go out to eat a couple times a month without guilt. They can take a road trip to see the grandkids and stay a few nights. When the car needs new tires, it's an annoyance, not an emergency. That's the real texture of this rung. The constant low-grade financial anxiety of level 1 starts to lift. Their budget has a little shape to it now. The paid-off house, again, is the foundation. Like Dorothy, their security rests on not having a housing payment. Necessities, housing costs, utilities, food, insurance, healthcare take up the bulk of the $42,000, but not all of it. There's a slice left over, maybe $500 or $600 a month, for the things that make life feel like living. A modest vacation once a year, gifts for the grandkids, a hobby, a meal out. They're not building wealth at this level, and a truly large shock, a major home repair, a health crisis with big out-of-pocket costs, would still hurt. But day to day, Frank and Ann feel okay, comfortable enough, and comfortable enough for a huge number of retirees is a real victory. Level 3, $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year. This one is important because $5,000 a month puts you right around the median, the true middle of American retirement. If you're here, you are living what a typical financially successful retirement actually looks like in this country. Let me introduce George and Pat, both 70, to show you how it's built. Their income stack has 3 legs now, and that's the secret of this level. 2 Social Security checks bring in about $40,000 a year, and then they have a more substantial nest egg, around $500,000, and 4% of that adds $20,000 a year. 40 plus 20 is $60,000, or $5,000 a month. Notice what's happening as we climb. At level 1, it was all Social Security. Now, a third of the income is coming from their own savings. Their careful saving over the years is doing real work. And life at $5,000 a month feels good. Really good. This is comfortable retirement, the kind people picture when they daydream about it. George and Pat travel, not lavishly, but a real trip or 2 a year. Maybe a week somewhere warm in the winter. A visit to a national park in the summer. They eat out when they feel like it. They can be generous, help a grandchild with a school expense, give at church, pick up the check at a family dinner. Their home is comfortable and well kept. When something breaks, they fix it without a second thought. The financial anxiety that defined the lower rungs is mostly gone. It's been replaced by something like ease. Their budget reflects that ease. The essentials that consumed almost everything at level 1 now take maybe half to 2/3 of the income, leaving a real meaningful amount, well over $1,000 a month, for travel, hobbies, generosity, and simple enjoyment. Let me put actual numbers on that month, since the middle is where most of you live. Of their $5,000, the paid-off home still costs something. Call it $700 or $800 a month for property taxes, insurance, and upkeep. Utilities, another $300 or so. Food, maybe $800, including eating out. Transportation, car costs, gas, insurance, perhaps $600. Health care, including their Medicare premiums and supplements, and out-of-pocket costs, easily $800 to $1,000. That's the necessities, and it runs them somewhere around $3,000 to $3,500 a month, which leaves roughly $1,500 every month for the good stuff. Travel, hobbies, gifts, generosity, the occasional splurge. That leftover slice, that discretionary $1,500, is the whole difference between surviving and living. And it's what the climb from level 1 to level 3 really buys you. Not a fancier life, but a free one. They can absorb a shock now, too. A $5,000 home repair is a bummer, not a catastrophe, because they have savings to draw on and a little slack in the monthly budget. George and Pat represent the quiet success story of American retirement. Not rich, but truly comfortable, secure, and free. If this is where you land, understand that you have done well, better than most. Now the ladder starts to change character. Up to this point, we've been climbing through degrees of comfort. From here up, we climb into degrees of abundance. Level 4, $8,000 a month, $96,000 a year. This is affluent retirement, and it puts you well above the median into roughly the top quarter of retirees. Let me show you how $8,000 a month gets built using Robert and Susan, both 68, because their stack has a piece the lower levels didn't. Robert spent his career at a company that still offered a traditional pension, and it pays him about $15,000 a year for life. Add their 2 Social Security checks, a healthy $45,000, because they were higher earners, and their guaranteed income alone is $60,000 a year. Then their nest egg, around $900,000, throws off another $36,000 at 4%. Together, $96,000 a year, $8,000 a month. Notice the pension. That's often the quiet dividing line between the comfortable middle and the properly affluent. A second guaranteed income stream on top of Social Security. It's the single biggest factor separating the retiree at $55,000 from the retiree at $95,000. What does $8,000 a month buy and feel? It buys the disappearance of money as a daily concern. Robert and Susan don't budget in the anxious sense at all anymore. They travel well, a couple of big trips a year, maybe an international one. Comfortable hotels, not counting the cost of dinner. They have a nice home, perhaps in a desirable area, kept up by people they hire rather than work they do themselves. They can be seriously generous, help a grandchild with college, contribute to causes they care about, spread money to family while they're alive to enjoy watching it help. Healthcare costs, which loom so large at the bottom, are simply absorbed here. Their expenses might run $6,000 a month of good living, and they're still not spending everything they bring in. Which means, remarkably, they're often still getting wealthier in retirement. That's the mark of this level. The money now works faster than they can comfortably spend it. Level 5, $12,000 a month, $144,000 a year. Now we're into wealthy territory, roughly the top 5 to 10% of retiree households. And to produce this, the machine tilts hard toward personal savings. Let me use James and Linda, both 71. Their Social Security as high earners who delayed claiming is strong, say $55,000 a year combined. But look what has to carry the rest. To get from $55,000 up to $144,000, their savings have to supply about $89,000 a year. And at the 4% rule, producing $89,000 a year takes a nest egg of over $2.25 million. That's the story of the upper rungs. Social Security becomes a smaller and smaller slice, and your own accumulated wealth does almost all the lifting. At the bottom of the ladder, the government check was everything. Up here, it's a rounding error against the portfolio. Life at $144,000 a year is, frankly, luxurious by most standards, though the people living it rarely feel rich. They feel comfortable and secure, which is its own tell. James and Linda travel wherever and whenever they want, in real comfort. They may have 2 homes or a home and a long seasonal rental somewhere they love. They drive nice cars. They belong to a club if they want. 1, they give generously and thoughtfully. And here's the thing that defines real wealth at this level. They truly could not spend it all. Their spending, however comfortable, is well under their income, so their wealth keeps growing even as they enjoy it. The question at this level stops being, can we afford it, and becomes, what do we want to do with the surplus? Give it now? Leave it to the kids? Support a cause? That is a completely different set of questions than Dorothy is asking at the bottom of the ladder. Different planet, really. And finally, the top of our climb. Level 6, $20,000 a month, $240,000 a year. This is seriously rich. Roughly the top 1 to 3% of American retirees. Very few people live here. Let me show you how it's assembled, with William and Elizabeth, both 72, because at this altitude the income usually comes from several streams at once. Their Social Security is near the maximum, perhaps $60,000 a year combined, because they were high earners who delayed to 70. But the vast majority of their income is generated by wealth. A portfolio of well over $4 million, throwing off $180,000 a year at 4%. And often at this level, there's more than just stocks and bonds. There might be rental real estate producing income or other investments layered on top. The defining feature of the top rung is multiple independent streams, most of them flowing from a large base of assets. What does $240,000 a year look like in retirement? It looks like money is simply not a constraint on any ordinary decision. William and Elizabeth fly first class or private, own multiple properties, travel for months at a time, and never once look at a price on a menu. But here's what's striking, and a little humbling. Their day-to-day life, the actual texture of a Tuesday, may not look dramatically different from James and Linda's a rung below, or even from George and Pat's in the comfortable middle. They still wake up, have their coffee, see their grandkids, tend their health, worry about the people they love. Because past a certain point, and that point is lower than most people think, additional money stops changing your daily life and starts changing only your options and your legacy. At this level, the real questions are almost entirely about wealth transfer, taxes, and impact. How to pass it on, how to minimize what the government takes, what mark to leave. Their financial life is less about living and more about stewarding. That's what the very top of the ladder actually looks like. And it's worth knowing that it's less magical and more ordinary in the ways that matter than the number suggests. So let's step back and look at the whole ladder we just climbed, because the patterns are the real lesson. Here's the first. 1. As you go up the ladder, the source of the money flips completely. At the bottom, Dorothy's income is essentially all Social Security. The government check is her whole world. In the middle, it's a balance. Social Security plus a pension plus savings, working together. At the top, it's overwhelmingly personal wealth. William and Elizabeth's Social Security is a footnote. So the entire climb from bottom to top is really the story of one thing gradually replacing another. Your own accumulated assets taking over the job that Social Security does, for everyone at the start. And that leads to a pattern that stops most people cold when they see it. Each rung up this ladder costs dramatically more savings than the one below it. The climb gets steeper the higher you go. Watch. To go from Dorothy's level to Frank and Ann's, from $2,000 to $3,500 a month, took a nest egg of about $300,000 on top of Social Security. To reach the comfortable middle at $5,000, about $500,000. To reach the affluent $8,000 level, roughly $900,000, though a pension did some of that work. But then it accelerates hard. Reaching $12,000 a month takes a portfolio north of $2.25 million, and the top rung, $20,000 a month, requires something like $4.5 million in invested assets. Look at that curve. The first few rungs are a few $100,000 apart, and then suddenly the jumps are measured in millions. That's why the middle of this ladder is so crowded, and the top is so sparse. Not because people at the top tried harder, but because each additional rung demands exponentially more capital than the last. It's a powerful thing to understand before you decide how high you're willing to sacrifice to climb. Here's the second pattern, and it's the most important one. For your actual life, the jumps in daily happiness are not evenly spaced up this ladder. The leap from Dorothy's $2,000 to Frank and Ann's $3,500 is life-changing. It's the difference between constant anxiety and breathing room, and it genuinely transforms well-being. The step from there to the comfortable middle at $5,000 adds real freedom and joy. But the jumps after that, from comfortable to affluent to wealthy to rich, while they add options, security, and legacy, change the actual daily experience of life far less than you'd expect. Going from $5,000 to $20,000 a month quadruples the income, but it does not quadruple anyone's happiness, or even come close. The early rungs buy relief and freedom. The later rungs mostly buy scale and choices. That's not an argument against building wealth. Security and options are real and worth pursuing, but it's a powerful reason not to sacrifice your whole life chasing a rung far above the one, where contentment actually lives. And here's the third pattern, the practical one, the one I most want you to carry away. The biggest lever on this entire ladder, for most real people, is guaranteed income. Look back at what separated the levels. The single Social Security check versus two checks, the presence or absence of a pension. Those guaranteed streams did enormous work especially in the comfortable middle where most people actually land, which is exactly why the decisions we talk about on this channel matter so much. When you claim Social Security, whether you maximize the survivor benefit, how you turn savings into reliable income, those choices can move you a full rung up this ladder or keep you from slipping one down. So where are you on this ladder? And what would it take to climb a rung? Let me make it practical. First, find your rung. Add up your guaranteed income, Social Security plus any pension, then add 4% of your savings and see which level that total lands on. That's your honest starting point. Now, if you want to climb one rung, there are really only a handful of levers, and you've seen them all today. You can boost your guaranteed income most powerfully by delaying Social Security, which can lift that check by hundreds of dollars a month for life. And for couples, by coordinating so the higher earner's check, the survivor benefit, is as large as possible. You can lower your number by killing the mortgage or right-sizing your home, because a paid-off house effectively moves you up a rung without another dollar of income. Remember, it was the foundation under every comfortable retiree we met. You can add a stream, a bit of part-time work you enjoy, or rental income, where every $10,000 a year is like having $250,000 more in savings. Or, if you're still working, you can simply save more in these final years, when the catch-up contribution limits are at their highest. Pick the lever that fits your life. You don't have to leap 3 rungs. Moving up even one, from anxious to comfortable, from comfortable to free, is often the whole game. Now let me be honest and careful with you, the way I always try to be. These 6 portraits are illustrations, not templates. Real people are messier, and the exact numbers depend on where you live, your health, your housing, and a dozen personal details. A paid-off house in a low-cost town can make $5,000 a month feel like 8. A mortgage in a high-cost city can make 8 feel like 5. The tax picture differs at every level too, and it grows more complicated as you climb. The 2026 figures I've used, the average Social Security check, the median incomes, will drift over time. And I've kept the withdrawal math deliberately simple with that 4% rule, which is a sturdy guideline, not a guarantee. So take these as a map of the territory, not a survey of your specific plot of land. For that, a fee-only financial planner, one who charges for their time and doesn't sell products, can show you exactly which rung you're on and what it would really take to reach the next. Let me bring the whole climb home. And as you're figuring out which rung you're on, it's also worth looking at what your retirement money is actually built on. Because income in retirement is not just about how much you'd have. It's also about where that money sits, how exposed it is to market swings, how inflation affects it, and whether every dollar is tied to the same paper assets like stocks, bonds, and traditional retirement accounts. That does not mean you should panic. It does not mean you should move everything around. And it definitely does not mean gold is some magic solution. But some retirees do choose to diversify a portion of their retirement savings into physical gold through a gold IRA, because they want part of their nest egg outside the usual stock and bond system, especially when they're thinking about inflation, government debt, market volatility, or what the dollar will buy 10 or 20 years from now. So if you have money in an old 401k, IRA, or retirement account, and you want to understand whether physical gold belongs anywhere in your retirement plan, I'll leave a link below to a free Gold IRA information guide. It explains how physical gold can be held inside a retirement account, how rollovers work, what the IRS rules are, and what questions to ask before moving any retirement money. Just click that link, fill in your information, and you'll get the free guide directly emailed to you for free. Use it as a free educational guide, take your time, and decide for yourself whether a gold IRA makes sense for your situation. Now let me bring the whole climb home. We went from Dorothy, careful and content on her Social Security alone, all the way up to William and Elizabeth, stewarding a fortune most people never see. 6 rungs, 6 different worlds. And the thing I hope surprised you is this. The distance between those worlds, measured in dollars, is enormous, a tenfold difference from bottom to top. But measured in the things that actually fill a day, a warm cup of coffee, time with people you love, a body that still works, purpose and peace, the distance is far, far smaller than the numbers suggest. So find yourself on this ladder. Know your rung and know honestly what the next one up would take, because that's real and worth planning for. But don't ever fall for the lie that contentment lives only at the top. It doesn't. It's available on every single rung. And the people who understand that at any income level are the ones who actually retire rich in the way that counts. Wherever you land on this ladder, aim to be secure, aim to be free of the anxiety that steals the joy, and then get busy being happy, because that part was never for sale at any level.